this seat, and he is going to, lead us through the whole system or moderate. He will introduce the presenter and then take care of the rest. I mean, Dr. Frimpong is an scientist with a lot of credentials. Did his PhD in the United States, done a lot of work on molecular science, DNAs, and what have you. In Ghana, he is running the City of Hope, Trivers Institute of Biomedical Sciences, which I'm part, also running a laboratory. I mean, I don't even have the words to talk about him, but it's just an honor to have him to be a part of this institute, but then a greatest honor for him to be my brother and my classmate. We were all enrolled in a college, in a school together in 1975 when we were small boys. And we've grown together, not as friends, but as brothers. And I'm really part of whatever he's doing. Even as I introduce him, I want to recommend Trivers Institute to you, Institute of Biomedical Science, and what he's doing. Probably when he introduces the speaker, he may say one or two about what he's doing. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, I have Dr. Kenneth Frimpong to steer the affairs of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm actually very humbled. And thank you very much for the invitation to join. And you've done fantastically. We thank God for you, for everything you've done. Whilst I might say a word or two about Thrivers, this is about Frimpong-Manso Institute, and I think what we're going to hear today is going to be very, very vital for us, and it's going to help us significantly as we move forward. Yes, we do molecular biology and the like, but I think the main thing is that I must take this opportunity, as a matter of fact, to thank you all for joining this conversation here. This is very, very important on the convergence of climate change and environmental health on non-communicable diseases. Well, as Paul said, I am Ken Frimpong. I'm the chair for the Science, Technology, and Health thematic area at the Institute. And the presenter today, Dr. Samuel Nkansa-Darko, is a fellow, in this thematic area. As I indicated, the conversation is going to be very, very important. It's extremely so, as a matter of fact, as we see the onslaught of environmental degradation resulting from human activities and climate change, leading to a lot of issues for our health. We are lucky to have Dr. Nkansa-Darko lead the discussion. He had his doctorate in biochemistry from KNUST in Kumasi, and he has extensive expertise in type 2 diabetes and hypertension research. These are non-communicable diseases, so you see right away that he is the right person with the right background for the presentation today. He also has vast collaborations, including with scientists at the University of Basel on Next-Gen Scientist Program. He's currently on faculty at the Department of Molecular Medicine at the School of Medicine and Dentistry at KNUST. I hand over to him to lead the discussion. Doc, you have the mic.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you very much, Dr. Frimpong, for the kind introduction. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank the founder of the Frimpong-Manso Institute, Reverend Professor Paul Frimpong-Manso, and my chair, Dr. Kenneth Frimpong, for giving me the opportunity to give the first presentation in the area of health, technology, and then science. I'm very grateful. And I'm also grateful for everyone for joining in. We are going to have, as Doc has said, a very interesting discourse this evening. So I'll try to share my slides and then we'll move on from there. All right. Mercy, is my slide showing in presenter mode?
Yes, it's showing.
Okay.
But I think, yes, I can see now. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. So our discourse for this evening is on double jeopardy, the convergence of climate change and environmental health on non-communicable diseases. So the import of this is that we want to see whether climate change and environmental health are adding up to rising conditions of non-communicable diseases that I'll be talking to you about. Now, before we start, I would like to venture to say that every country strives for economic growth. And for our nation, Ghana, it is nothing different. And when we are talking of economic growth, obviously, we are looking at productivity. And productivity comes from various sectors. And when you mention productivity, most definitely you are looking at human resource. And with human resource, the health of the human resource is also very key in order to have good and sustained productivity. But there's a challenge here, and that challenge is the presence of diseases. Now, we are coming from a continent that has a very interesting background when it comes to disease prevalence and the type of diseases that prevail in our continent. So that is much what we'll be talking about this evening. And by way of the outline of the presentation, we'll be looking at the disease burden in Africa. And then we'll zoom into Ghana and look at climate change and its impact. And also look at environmental health. And then where is the link, the convergence? How are these two impacting on non-communicable diseases now? And then we'll look at some ways forward by which we can try to roll back the tide of these factors on non-communicable diseases. So my first slide would like to take us through the disease landscape in Africa. So this is a chart showing timelines of major emerging and re-emerging diseases in Africa since 1950 to the year 2020. So starting from 1950, we have the first reported human infection of chikungunya. And this has increased since 1960. And then the countries that have experienced this infection has also increased, with the largest reported from Kenya in 2004. Now, in 1960s, we also saw the emergence of a Marburg hemorrhagic fever. And this condition is also similar to the famous Ebola virus that was first reported in 1976 in human infections in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And then since then, outbreaks have been seen in Gabon, in the Republic of Congo, and then some parts of West Africa. In the 1980s, the famous HIV/AIDS virus also was first reported in 1980 among Africans. And by the year 2020, more than 25 million people are reported to be living with HIV/AIDS in Africa. In the year 2010s, we also saw outbreaks of measles and then yellow fever virus. Fast forward to the year 2020s, where the famous pandemic, the COVID-19, broke out. And out of August 2020, a total of 1,267,000 confirmed cases and about 30,000 plus deaths have also been reported in Africa. So the scheme shows that much of the prevailing diseases in Africa seems to be more of the communicable, that is, diseases that can be passed on from one infected person to another. But then my next slide might show a different story. Now, this is data from 1990 to 2017 about disease prevalence in Africa. So on this graph, you see group 1, which is indicative of a particular class of diseases. And these are the ones that I've mentioned in the previous slides, the communicable or the infectious ones. And then we have the group 2, which we call the non-communicable diseases. And these are from cardiovascular diseases, chronic respiratory diseases, diabetes, and then cancer. Now, looking at the graph, you would see that as the communicable diseases peak and plateau, it starts to decline towards the year 2017. But that for the non-communicable diseases shows otherwise, where we see a steady surge in the non-communicable diseases from 1990 to 2017. Now let's try and mirror this with Ghana and see the burden of diseases in Ghana. In 2000, the burden of disease in Ghana showed that about 64% of diseases were attributable to communicable ones, whilst 31% were non-communicable diseases. Fast forward to 2019, where we have 47% of diseases being communicable, and this shows a drastic decline from 64 in 2000 to 47. And then when you look at that for non-communicable disease, a steady rise to 46%. So this shows that the dynamics are changing. Whilst communicable diseases are going down, the non-communicable diseases are rising. Now, this has been attributed to lifestyle and certain activities that we are involved in. Some are genetic, predisposing people to these non-communicable diseases, but there's an issue of nature or nurture, where the person might have the predisposition, but the environment can cause the individual to actually get the disease when the individual does not have it. So the projections has been that these non-communicable disease will eventually replace infectious diseases in low-income countries in the sub-Saharan African region. But the true fact is that we are now experiencing a coexistence of these communicable and non-communicable diseases in these low and middle income countries in sub-Saharan Africa. So the disease burden of Ghana has shown a transitioning from the predominantly communicable disease to the non-communicable disease. But it doesn't end there. There are certain factors that we should be aware of and we should be concerned about. And these are the factors that we are going to talk about this evening. And one of those factors is the issue of climate change. Now, when we talk of climate change, we are talking of consistent variation in temperatures and weather patterns. Now, the background of this picture brings to mind quite recently reports of wildfires in Canada. And these wildfires are causing smoke to rise up to as far as New York in the United States. And this was a source of worry for Americans. That is one extreme of climate change, leading to high temperatures resulting in wildfires. The other extreme in which we experience here is also floods. And we are not new to this for us in Ghana. For those in Accra, it might be perennial. Those in Kumasi is also trying to be perennial nowadays, where whenever it rains, you experience floods. And quite recently, there are reports of floodings in some parts of Takoradi and also in the Volta region, which usually used not to be the case. But these are all the effects of climate change because of the extreme changes in temperature. Now, how does climate change come about? So we are looking at the cause and the effects of climate change. Now on the left, you see the globe and you see some factors contributing or causing climate change. The first of it is deforestation. Now, deforestation is simply the cutting down of vegetation for activities like mining and also for generating of solid fuel. Now, what this does is that it reduces the ability or the means by which carbon dioxide is absorbed in the environment, because these trees are responsible for taking in the carbon dioxide that we humans expire, and then other activities generate. And so these trees are able to harbor this carbon dioxide in themselves, we say in their biomass. The second is about greenhouse effect. Now, agricultural activities like the application of fertilizers and the rearing of ruminants, and which from their digestive system, they undergo what we call enteric fermentation because of the forage that they eat undergoes fermentation, and as a result, there's generation of methane gas. And these gases are what we call the greenhouse gases. They are greenhouse gases because of the effect that they contribute to the environment when they are more, and then the effect that they cause with respect to solar radiations. Also, we have population increase. When we have boom in populations, human beings respire carbon dioxide, and some activities that human beings are involved in, like generation of energy, also produces these greenhouse gases that will further increase the levels of these carbon dioxide and other gases that will accumulate in the atmosphere and result in an effect called the greenhouse effect. Also, destruction of marine ecosystem, because the sea is one major sink for carbon. What it means is that the sea absorbs much of these carbons so that it doesn't accumulate in the environment. So when we have these gases accumulate, what they do is that when solar radiations hit the earth, they form a form of canopy over the earth globe. And what it does is that the radiations that deflect off the earth's surface are redirected back onto the earth. So consistently, the temperatures on earth continues to increase as a result of these greenhouse effect, preventing radiations to go into space, but then reflecting it back on earth and heating the earth's surface, causing temperatures to rise on the earth's surface. So one means by which we can monitor climate change is by measuring the global temperature anomalies. So this slide is credited to the NASA Earth Observatory, which shows that from 2021 ties to the year 2018 as the 6th warmest year on record. So this graph was done in comparison to the year ranges of 1951 to 1980 as the baseline. So you can see a steady rise in temperatures from 1980 to 2020, as close as variation of 1 degree Celsius. 1 degree Celsius is very much significant because it is an accumulated yearly temperature measurement. So if you have temperature variations of about 1 degree Celsius, it is a cause to worry. Now let's look at that for Africa. It tells a similar story. But in addition to that, the level of variation is even much significant in Africa than the global composite values, because the temperatures are deviating to as high as about 1.5 degree Celsius. Now let's come home to Ghana, in which this data is an observed annual average temperature over the period of 1901 to the year 2021. So from 1981, we see a sudden decline, and then from 1991 to the year 2021, we see a steady leap in temperature of about 1 degree Celsius difference from the point of peaking to the year 2021. So this is a show of what is prevailing with respect to climate change. What is happening globally is mirrored in Africa and further mirrored in Ghana, showing temperature anomalies prevailing from the year 1991 for Ghana to the year 2021. The second factor that I would like to mention is the deteriorating environmental health due to air pollution. So for the purpose of this presentation, I would only focus on air pollution, but there are other ways in which the environment is deteriorating by way of water pollution, by way of land pollution. So what simply comes to mind is our issue with galamsey, and I'm sure Dr. George Manful, who is the chair for the environment and sustainability theme, and his team have dealt with this in their previous discourse. So the release of these pollutants as a result of activities related to transport, industry, are means of concern because we are losing the quality of life as a result of these pollutants being released into the atmosphere. Now, in indicating environmental health, there are 3 main indicator categories that are looked at. That is the basic indicator category, environmental indicator, and then health indicator. But for the purpose of this evening's discussion, we'll be looking at the quality layer. So in essence, we'll be looking at the quality of air with respect to what we call particulate matter 2.5 concentration. Now, what is particulate matter 2.5 concentration? It is simply a measure of air quality. So small particles pose the greatest risk to human health because while the nose can filter most coarse particles, fine and ultrafine particles can be inhaled deeply into the lungs, and there they can cause havoc or even pass into the bloodstream. So when we are talking of particulate matter 2.5, we try to draw a comparison with human hair. So human hair has a diameter of about 50 to 180 microns. Sand has about 50 to about 2,000 microns. Dust, about 1 to 100 microns. And the almighty SARS-CoV-2 has about 0.02 to 0.09 microns. Now, when we talk of PM 2.5, we are simply saying that there are some particles that are very small, that they are able to escape the trappings in the nose that are supposed to prevent coarse particles from filtering to the lungs and possibly into blood. So these particles that have diameters of about 2.5 microns and lesser are able to escape and can cause havoc in the human system. So the WHO has a measure of how much of these particles are supposed to be in the air around us. So in the 2022 World Quality Air Report, the WHO has a guideline of having about 0 to 5 microgram per meter cube of these particulate matters, which have diameters lesser or equal to 2.5 microns. Now the infographic on the right, and with a blue arrow, I have pinpointed Ghana on the infographic. Now the color coding of Ghana matches with PM 2.5 concentrations of 25.1 to about 35 microgram per meter cube. And that exceeds WHO PM 2.5 guideline by 5 to 7 times. And obviously, this is a source of worry. Now, let's probe further to what the data tells us with respect to Ghana. So this is an infographic of Africa and some countries and cities in which this data is continuously being collected and then monitored. So those with the violet at the top shows the levels of PM 2.5 being higher, and then as you go down, it gets better. So those with bad or worse air quality are those at the top. Chad with 89.7, Burkina Faso with 63. So these are the concentrations of the PM 2.5 in a specific volume. But what is important to note is that these countries and their levels of PM 2.5 gives an indication that vegetation plays a key role in air quality. So you can see Chad, Burkina, Egypt, their vegetation is primarily the savanna or desert lands. But when you look down to Angola, Kenya, I'm sure there is more of green vegetation. So the air quality there is better than those in the desert areas. Now, when it comes to polluted cities, looking at the number 11 and then the number 15, we are coming home. So Kintampo in Ghana records 32.9, and then Accra in Ghana records 30.1. And these values match with that, which indicates that our PM 2.5 exceeds that approved by WHO by 5 to 7 times. So coming to the purpose of our discourse this evening, how is climate change and air pollution affecting our risk or our chances of getting non-communicable diseases? Now, these two factors that I've mentioned, climate change and then air pollution, all come under certain umbrellas in the Sustainable Development Goal, which is to help life on Earth. So for climate change, it is being tackled under SDG 13, which is climate action. And then for pollution in the air and on land, SDG 15, which is life on land. And NCDs also is being tackled under good health and well-being. So these are key areas that needs global attention, and that is why they are all couched under the Sustainable Development Goals to help improve life on Earth. Now, how is temperature rise and then the increase in these particulate matters that are harmful to us affecting our risk and chances of non-communicable diseases, which are already on the ascendancy in Africa and Ghana? So when we look at heat and air pollution with respect to cardiovascular risk, heat, stress, and then these particulate matters have the tendency of triggering what we call inflammation. Simply how the body responds to the entry of foreign matter or how the body responds to injury. And it does this by assembling certain proteins and cells to the site where this injury is. And then we also have hemostasis, which is usually a phenomenal experience in heat stress. What it simply means is that blood flow out of injuries are being slowed down. So hemo, blood, and then stasis, stagnation, all in the bid to prevent injury or excess loss of blood, which is a phenomenon that is experienced in heat stress. Now, these inflammation causes what we call atheroma formation. So that is simply plaque. So the blood vessels are supposed to carry blood with a certain diameter so that blood can easily flow through all parts of the body. But the formation of this atheroma and plaque, as we can see in the slide, narrows the pathway. And this leads to increase in blood pressures and other cardiovascular outcomes that are undesired. So we see that heat coming from global warming and then air pollution, the release of these particles that are likely to trigger inflammation, have the tendency of either causing or aggravating cardiovascular diseases in individuals or populations who are or may be at risk. Secondly, I would like to look at these factors on diabetes. Now, when you talk of diabetes, we are talking about individuals not being able to absorb glucose in the blood. So after diet and absorption from digestion, you would have glucose in the blood. But there is a chemical signal called insulin that is supposed to direct the entry of this glucose into cells to be worked upon so that glucose levels will reduce in blood. Now, when an individual has diabetes, insulin is either not being produced, that is an indication of what we call diabetes type 1, or we have the type 2, in which the insulin is being produced, but the cells are just not being responsive. So the individual experiences what we call insulin resistance. The cells are not responding to the signaling by insulin to take in glucose. Now, this is as a result, again, of the inflammation that is triggered by the particulate matters that enter through the lungs and then also into blood. So it causes what we call vascular insulin resistance, and then gradually it becomes more systemic and more pervasive, and then the cells are not able to take in the glucose, and this glucose piles up in the blood, leading to outcomes that affect areas or organs like the kidney, the eye, and then also the nerve cells. So with vascular insulin resistance subsequent to inflammation, there is the chances of increasing the risk of individuals to diabetes mellitus. Now, I also want to talk about the effect of these pollutants on cancer risk. So these pollutants contain chemicals that have the potential of causing cells to lose their natural ability. Cells have a natural ability of controlling how well they grow and how fast they grow. But these carcinogens have the tendency of either changing the constituent of what directs these cells to grow and causing these cells to grow abnormally without any mechanism to restrict them. And that is when the risk of cancers rises. And more often, you can find more of these carcinogens as a result of air pollution from both fossil fuel and then also other industrial operations that release these toxins into the air. So heat arising from climate change, and then also these particulate matters, which could be carcinogenic, also have the tendency of causing or increasing the risk of individuals to have these non-communicable diseases. Now, what do we do in order to stem the tide against this rising risk of non-communicable diseases as a result of climate change and environmental health? The first is to improve agricultural practices. So activities like irrigated rice and alternate wetting and drying of these lands that are used to propagate rice is a good initiative to stem the tides, because water efficient practices of periodic drying and reflooding of these irrigated rice fields decreases anaerobic decomposition of organic matter. So when this organic matter is acted upon by anaerobic microorganisms, it leads to the production of what we call methane gas. And this methane gas is a greenhouse gas. So when we do periodic and alternate wetting and drying of these rice lands, it will definitely reduce the amount of methane that could be produced as a result of this anaerobic decomposition. And then also the use of urea deep placement. Most of agricultural activities involve the use of fertilizers. But when this is substituted with urea deep placement, it reduces emissions from fertilizer production and on-farm nitrous oxide emissions, because these fertilizers are applied on the farm. So in the production and in the use of these fertilizers, there's a tendency of generating these greenhouse gas emissions. So by using urea and deep placing, it reduces this potential of increasing greenhouse gases. And then also we could have livestock head size management. That is, the increased animal productivity enables fewer, more productive animals. So instead of generating or producing or rearing large numbers, which have the tendency of generating large volumes of methane gas being released, the hard work has to be done to select the more productive species or the more productive breeds, so that we have fewer but more productive animals producing fewer emissions than many less productive animals. Another means by which we can do this is by gradually phasing fossil fuel in favor of clean, renewable energy. We burn fossil fuel to generate heat. We burn fossil fuel to generate energy. And these contribute to these greenhouse gases. But we could gradually phase this off and substitute it with the use of solar energy and wind energy. Africa, we say we are blessed with a lot of solar energy, but unfortunately, we have failed to take much advantage of this energy, in which it would help reduce the production of greenhouse gases and then reduce the effect that it can have on our health with respect to non-communicable diseases. Another way by which this can be done is by prioritizing walking and cycling. That will boost health and reduce fuel burning. So this would also increase our physical activity levels, and physical activity levels, when they are high, have been found to help reduce our risk for certain conditions like cardiovascular and other metabolic conditions like diabetes mellitus, which has been talked about. So it is high time, probably we start thinking of creating bicycle lanes in our cities and other areas to increase the use of bicycles and then reduce fuel burning, and on the other hand, boost the health of individuals who will be involved in these means of transport. So we've talked about climate change. We've talked about the pollution in the environment. All these areas need attention. And it is informative to say that these areas need special capacities in order to maintain the good health and then the quality of life that we are all craving for. So it is the work of the climatologist, it is the work of the engineer, it is the work of the public health expert, all to come together to make sure that we are stemming the tide with respect to climate change and then with respect to air pollution, so that the already existing burden on our health system, will not further be burdened when these two factors or these two areas are increasing the burden on getting these non-communicable diseases. And so we need a concerted effort in order to make sure that the already increasing or upsurge in non-communicable diseases is not further disturbed with growing temperature changes and then the release of more the release of more air pollutants, which is causing a decline in health with respect to non-communicable diseases. So to end off, I say that our health is our wealth, and our wealth and our health is a shared cost. So let us be conscious of the fact that our environment is key to our longevity, and that will make our health able to generate the wealth that we all crave and pray for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. This has been a very informative presentation. So just to recap, you have told us and led us to understand that Africa and Ghana are at a stage of coexistence of communicable diseases and non-communicable diseases. You have led us through to understand the impact of deforestation, some of our practices, such as galamsey that you pointed out, fossil fuels leaving out or leading to the accumulation of particulates in our air. And with the degradation of air quality, we are having quite a number of challenges. You've mentioned to us the impact of same on diabetes and cancer, among other diseases, and that we all have to pull together to come up with solutions to make sure that our health becomes a shared cost and our health becomes our wealth. Thank you very much, Doc. Now we'll open for questions. Now there are two options. Under the chat, one can type in any specific questions that you may have, and then I will moderate that from this angle. So you can type in a chat. At the same time also, for the sake of time, you can unmute or raise your hand, and then we give you the floor for you to ask a question or make a comment. Thank you. Doc, I think I will start with the questions, if I may.
Yes, you may, Doc.
Thank you. So will you comment on the contribution of plastics and plasticides on the degradation of air quality that we have in Ghana?
All right. So with plastics, we say it is not biodegradable, simply meaning that on its own, it will not break down and be decimated. So the only way usually you'd have people dealing with plastics is by burning. And these burning produces certain hydrocarbons and other chemicals that are also carcinogenic. So in effect, by trying to solve the problem, we are actually increasing or deteriorating the state of the environment, and is also carcinogenic, further harming us by way of causing or leading to cancers. So much of these plastics will not degrade, but the means of degrading these plastics is further increasing air pollution and its attendant effect on our health.
Thank you very much. Is there any question? You may raise your hand or you may type it up. Dr. Whilst participants are thinking of or coming up with questions, I have another one. Now, you globally, right, the global south is not contributing nearly even a half or even a quarter of the pollutions that are coming from the north. In other words, let's say the United States, Canada, China, etc. What can the global south do to influence the amount of pollution that is coming from the global north?
Hello, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Yes. As you said, much of the pollutants that are being generated in the global north because of their industrialization, they seem to be finding ways to roll back the tide, as the main purpose of this discourse is about. But the problem with us is that even though our loads of these pollutants are much lower, because of our inability of getting these pollutants out of the system, we are rather suffering a more effect of these even relatively lower levels of these pollutants compared to those in the higher or even the northern hemisphere. But unfortunately, we also have certain issues that we need to grapple about. So most often you have those in the global north shipping some of these pollutants down here for us to work on. And that is where maybe policy needs to be established in order to curb this, because already we are finding it difficult dealing with these pollutants. And these pollutants from other jurisdictions are brought in here, and then it further causes more harm. Take, for example, the Agbogloshi e-waste, where you would have these young men sifting through these secondhand, or let me say, these plastics that have been brought down here to be managed. And they burn these things so that they would recover some elements like copper and then sell for their daily bread. So whilst they are in search for their daily bread, they are further harming themselves and then also harming others who share the same air quality that they share as a result of their activities. So if policy can be tackled in order to reduce the shipment of such waste, and then also we have to find better ways of dealing with these plastics that are brought in here, and then we ourselves generate in order to make sure that our air quality and our environment is preserved.
Thank you very much, Doc. There is a comment from Frimpong-Manso. His comment is that cycling and walking are good interventions, but he thinks that there is a need for a lot of education in addition to having lanes dedicated for cycling. The cultural values does not encourage people to ride bikes, he says, and people tend to look down on you or classify you as stingy. What is your comment on that, Doc?
So I very much agree with you on the score that we need a lot of education. So tackling such issues, you would have everyone from his own angle. So you might need a lot of health promotion and education on the benefits of cycling and walking compared to the use of fossil fuel dense equipment as means of transport. And with the cultural values, I think culture is dynamic. So it can start from one point and then progress. So if people might look down on you because you are riding a bike, but you know yourself, you know your worth, and you know the importance of this activity and the fact that it is going to improve your health, I think you could also take the opportunity to educate them on such benefits. And I'm sure they will catch on, and then a new culture will then arise from that when people see the benefit of the actions that you are taking. So yes, it's true. We might have to educate people when such things arise, where we need to, we find it necessary to find dedicated lanes for cycling, because this is very much important. You go to other jurisdictions, you find the same lane with the bus, with the car, with the bicycle running on the same lane with little accidents. But unfortunately, even when you are you are using the motorbike, sometimes it is quite dangerous using the main road. So it is important. There has to be education, and there has to be the engineering aspect also. But then if you know the worth of the action and what it brings to you, you could also take the opportunity to be an agent of the change that you are calling for.
Thank you very much, Doc. There is Pastor Farabab has raised his hand. Pastor, you may unmute and ask your question.
Thank you very much, Doc. And congratulations, Dr. Nkansa Dakun. That's a very powerful presentation. I think my second question is actually what has been addressed now by the cycling vis-a-vis our cultural perception and how people look at you based on our worldview. You know, sometimes I am looking at it from the fact that, you know, the rate of productivity would decrease in terms of movement from one place to the other if you are riding a bicycle as compared to moving with a vehicle. But if there is a policy that actually, you know, demarcates where cycles should pass and those things, I think maybe it can make it a bit faster. That is my second question. But my first question has to do with the solar system in terms of reducing some of these risks. If I remember way back in 1998, we attended a seminar at the SOS College in Tema, and they were talking to us about this solar system and solar energy. But growing up, I realized that it is more expensive and costly in getting a solar panel or getting your house to be under solar as compared to the normal ECG or hydro power generation. So I want to find out, is there a way we can probably from here push the agenda of getting a policy outlined properly so that we can push it as a nation or as a continent? So because the after effect, the end effect is more costly to us if we keep using these things and polluting our environment. If we can get a policy, I don't know how to put it, but is there a way we can do this education and encourage people to do more of solar things than, you know, going the normal way that keeps increasing our health risk and so on and so forth? I don't know if maybe any of us can have an idea of what we can do. I'm sure probably there are certain politicians and government agencies that may also be linked to FMI so that we can look at it, because we really need help as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Farabab. And the issue or the discourse has started now. So I think we all have to pull our weights in trying to push these things, because there are some countries and jurisdictions where even when government sees that you are going off the national grid and you are getting yourself into alternate source of energy, you are giving or you are facilitated in getting these solar panels in order for you to get off the national grid. So it is more of an incentive for you even getting off the national grid and going solar or using other alternate energies. So if the discourse can be pushed, I think it will be in the right direction. But the issue is also has to do with, as you mentioned, with cost. So the more the production, obviously, the lower the cost will become. So if we accept the concept and then we push towards it, that is when obviously maybe government might find the need producers might also see the need, and then the cost would come down, and then other incentives will also be there for you to go for alternate energy and not the burning of fossil fuels that is likely to cause our health in the near future.
Thank you very much, Doc. Prof. Frimpong-Manso has his hand up. Prof.
Yes, thank you. Before I, bring my issue, the bicycle one, I'm in Deutschland, and here they have more priority. Those who are walking and those who are riding bicycles are given priority than vehicles. So we should, those who are in authority should take this seriously. Two, I'm talking about old cars, especially the diesel ones. Sometimes they will import a car to Ghana, which is several years old already. And the fumes, the smoke, I mean, it's something we have to think about. So we are also polluting, like we are talking about solar and the rest. We used to have a Kosomo, which was helping. We slept, and now that Kosomo cannot provide enough, we are using fossil fuel powered generators, car power, this. And we are compounding it. But when we have solar, it will be easier. In fact, I have Pastor Benjamin Champon, I think, on this platform, who was even trying to link up with some institutions that can supply solar, but to clear them, to sell them, the cost is something. But those of you here, I can testify that if you can manage to get an inverter and get a little bit solar to provide a little, you will enjoy cheaper costs for the rest of your life. But I'm also saying, Prof. Ken and Dr. Sami, what can we do? Can we educate places where they slaughter animals, abattoirs, not the official ones, the private ones? They literally burn ties to prepare these goats and sheep and cows. So normally, my wife will say, go to a certified abattoir or Norway. You go to Kumasi, the Zongos particularly, it is normal and nobody checks and nobody control. So since we are learning about air pollution and all those things, I felt I should bring that. But then my question was going to be, what can we do collectively? This institute doesn't stand for government should do it, Mr. B should do it. It's somebody's responsibility. We raise a problem, we create awareness, and we become a problem-solving institution, especially Dr. Ken like that one. So what can we do? What are some of the proposals that we can do to help stem the tide of this, crisis? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Doc, you want to take a crack at it first?
Yes, Prof. Let me take a crack at it. With respect to the abattoirs and all that, is a grave concern. It's a grave concern. And with the data that I showed, I'm tempted to believe, so I gave data for Kintampo and also gave data to Accra. I might be wrong, but I know at Kintampo there's a lot of animal farming. And probably if there are a lot of abattoirs there also, then most definitely it might link to the high rise in particulate matter that was reported there. And one thing that we can do in order to help resolve this is, from my end, collect more data. The more convincing your data, the more you can move it into policy. So just as we've started and we've seen these changes, we should also try as much as possible to do more, to collect more data, because the politician would like to see overwhelming data. And then that will push or force or draw him to make the quick and timely interventions. But whilst that is ongoing, we can still be engaging and educating ourselves about our environment and then the impact that our environment has on our health. It is when we understand that, that is when people will be willing to change and also be agents of change. So if we do all this, it will be a step in the right direction, whilst we collect more imposing data to drive policy for us to make changes by way of government pushing the agenda too.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doc. I agree with you that it is critical to get the politicians to understand the impact of our activities on the health issues that we are seeing. At the same time, I think I would go in also with the education. And I'm just wondering whether it's not possible to be a lot more graphic in our education of the population about, let's say, the issue of using tires at the abattoirs, for instance. You were talking about plastics and carcinogens, etc., contaminating the food you're going to eat, etc. The issue is they don't see the impact immediately. It becomes a long-term thing because disease causes takes quite a bit of time. But you know what? I think we can take that off because there are a lot of other things here. Pastor Farabaf has a hand up, but if a man with you has a comment here, let me read that one and then we go to Pastor Farabaf. So if a man with you is saying, he's asking you to clarify the agricultural aspect of the presentation. He wants to know whether reducing the number of animals a farmer can raise will it not essentially impact income of the farmer if we were to reduce the number of animals that a farmer is supposed to raise? Or are you talking about the species of animals that the farmer raises? That is from Ifamenu.
Okay, so Mr. Ifamenu, I'm referring to the fact that when you have more hardy species that can give you the needed amount of meat, the needed amount of milk, but with little numbers in order to generate that amount of meat and that amount of milk that you are looking for. Sometimes you have certain species that you need to rear a lot and then a few might survive, but then they would have generated a volume of methane that would have gone to add up to the already increasing levels of greenhouse gases. Whilst you can look at species that are able to generate the same amount of meat, the same amount of proteins, but with little numbers. I think it counts more if you look at quality more than quantity, whilst you are getting the same value for which you are rearing those animals. So if you can go for the species that are hardy and can give you the products that you are looking for, I don't think it will be good to the environment to go otherwise, in which you would have a few of these animals surviving to give you the output you are looking out for, but yet would have generated some amount of methane to the already increasing pool that is warming the globe.
Thank you very much. So the last question, the last comment or question goes to Pastor Farabaf.
Thank you, Prof. So I want to bring to the fore, like Daddy said, Reverend Professor Frimpong-Manso said, some of the vehicles that are brought into the country are too old. And leadership, I mean, as in leadership, leaders of this country knows that they have adverse effect on us. Yet, because of money and people's personal interests, it is allowed. I'm thinking that we need to push this very well. If we have to do some flyers and things, we have to do it, because I remember some time ago they said that nobody can import a used refrigerator into the country, and now it has become a policy. It has become a law. If you import something, a used refrigerator into the country, it is confiscated. You are not allowed to clear it at the port because as a nation, that is what we have come to. And the impact of that on our pollution system has reduced. So if we, maybe with the little we have, and I must recommend FMI for this great initiative, we have to keep doing it, because when we keep pushing and pushing, it becomes a national agenda. People will buy into it, and before we realize, it has caught fire everywhere, and it will be stopped. There will be a statement on it. Parliament can own it. Leadership can embrace it, and we push it, because at the end of the day, it is for our own good as a people. It is for our own good as a country. So just as the second-hand refrigerators and the used refrigerators were banned from being imported into the country, we can push this, and then they will stop the importation of. Sometimes some of the vehicles, they will tell you that you have to pay penalty or something, and then it is clear. And you look at the cost of the clearance and what kind of vehicle it is being brought and what it's coming to do. It doesn't worth it, but people's selfish interests and things. So it is just allowed. So I think that if we push, like that you say, if we push and educate more people, take it across our second cycle institutions, the universities, the polytechnics, everywhere, and then, leadership hears it. When I say leadership, I mean government, people in authority, they hear it, and we keep talking about it. It will come to the attention of the authorities, and then the necessary law or policy will be passed, and then it will help us, because we need to live a bit longer. People don't understand why some time ago our mothers, our great grandmothers and grandparents were living longer, and these days we don't live long, because almost everything is polluted, and we hardly walk, we hardly exercise. You eat polluted food, fertilized food, not organic, and all those things. So I think if what FMI is doing, we can appreciate them and then do more. It will help us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Farabab. Pastor Farabab. I think Dr. George Manfo has raised his hand. Respectfully, we'll let you go, and then this will be the last comment or question. We are to end at 8:10. It's 8:11. Dr. Manfo, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I have followed with keen interest the discussion that we've had now, particularly on the issue of renewable energy. About 2 years ago, Ghana committed itself in a document which is called the Nationally Determined Contribution of Ghana to address the problem of climate change. It was a government policy signed by His Excellency the President and submitted to the Climate Change Convention. Ghana committed itself to set a target of 10% of renewable energy within the energy mix of this country. In 2020, we had approximately 1%. So it means that we have a commitment to deliver 1% increase per year, and at the cost of $2.3 billion. Now, we are nowhere near that target. And there may be obvious reasons why we couldn't get the target. But I think that there is a need for an urgent policy review of the policy of scaling up renewable energy, because now the price of solar panels are going down rapidly. That was not the case about 10, 15, 20 years ago, but now it's coming down rapidly. And there is a need for us to commit ourselves to reducing our carbon footprint in this country. And I would support the views expressed by the FMI that more should be done in this country to make sure that we go green. At the moment, we are not doing the 1%. I don't even believe we are doing 0.2% per annum. And it is important that we do follow up with our commitment, because Ghana will be held accountable for this promise we made in 2021 to deliver this 10% of our energy mix by 2030. And I can put the document in which this pledge was made on the FMI website, or attached to the presentation made in this report. The presentation we just made today, so that we will all know what Ghana has committed itself to, and the engagement that institutions like FMI and others can dialogue with the government to see ways and means of meeting this very important pledge we have made to the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. So that will be the end of the comments and questions. I would like to thank everybody for being on this program, and especially to thank Dr. Samuel Nkansa. He has been fantastic. He has led us to understand the impact of our activities on our health and the environment. And out of this discussion, we have come to the conclusion that we need to educate the population. We need to impact policy. We need to consider possibly social re-engineering and advising ourselves to go with non-polluting technologies to ensure that our environment is healthier and we live a healthy life. Dr. Nkansa Darko, thank you very much. Thank you, Prof. Frimpong-Manso, Dr. Manfo, and everybody else on here. Now, if you want to basically leave a comment and or a feedback, the link has been given, so you can go on to the link and give your response therefrom. Thank you all very much, and have a good evening. There are other items on here, and Mercy, you can take over, please.
All right, thank you, Doc.
Doc, excuse me, Relati has put some comments. I thought Dr. Kenneth was going to read 2 comments from Relati on the chat box.
Yes, I did. Yes, Paul, I did see that, but I also was leaving myself to the pledge that I had made that.
Okay, thank you very much.
But then again, once you raise it, Relati has indicated that we should learn from South Africa and Cote d'Ivoire to advance modernism and health, and that we should move from rhetoric to movement. Thank you very much, Ray.
Thank you, Doc. All right. So briefly, we would invite Mr. Isaac Kufuor. He has a message for us. Frimpong-Manso Institute is planning a Christian tour from Egypt to Jordan and then to Israel, we've dubbed the Exodus of Moses. So we'll give him just a few minutes to talk about it to this audience briefly. Thank you. Mr. Kufuor, please, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to FM Institute, the chairman of tonight's program, and all the listeners for giving me this opportunity to talk about the Exodus of Moses trip from Egypt through Jordan to Israel. The trip will start from the 2nd of December 2023 until 16th, from 2nd to 16th. So from Egypt, we will visit River Nile, Red Sea. We see the pyramids, the burning bush, and then what I love most is climbing Moses Mountain, popularly known as Mount Sinai. The best time to climb Mount Sinai or Moses Mountain is 12 midnight and not later 3 a.m. The steps is about 3,750 steps. There's another way we call it the monkey route. So if you use monkey route, it's about every 30 minutes there's a coffee shop. Every 30 minutes there's a coffee shop. 3 hours before you reach the mountain where Moses received the 10 Commandments. I really love climbing this mountain. Then from Egypt, we'll be crossing to Jordan. Jordan, which used to be part of the land where Abraham classified as Canaan. So Israel and Canaan used to be one. Israel and Jordan used to be one. So the name within this region was called Canaan by Abraham. So Abraham settled at the Jordanian side. So we'll be visiting the place where Abraham lived with Isaac, Rebecca, Sarah, and where even Esau and Jacob were born. We also climbed the mountain where God said, so I will visit Mount Nebo, where God also told Moses that, look at this, you can spot the land from here, but your steps cannot be there. So Joshua continued from there. We also see the Moab land, and the Moab land, Ammonites, the land of Ammons, and then the Edomites. That's the land of Edom. Then we cross to Israel, where we will visit Mount of Temptation in Jericho, the wall of Jericho, Elisha's well. We go to Bethlehem to also see where Jesus was born, the shepherd's field, where the star appeared to the three wise men, and then we also see Boaz field, where we'll visit also Cana, where Jesus turned water into wine, and then Nazareth. We will also have a boat ride, Sea of Galilee, and then also River Jordan. Dead Sea floating is also waiting for us. And then we also see from Jerusalem, also we see the stations of the cross, or the 14 stations from the beginning, from the Last Supper to where Jacob, where Judas kissed Jesus and betrayed him, and then where the St. Peter's Gallican, where Peter denied Jesus 3 times, then up to where Jesus was tried, where he was crucified in Golgotha, and then up to the garden of where he was buried. We also visit Mount of Ascension. So these and many more are the areas that we are visiting in this December. You can secure the application form from online or from the office of FM Institute. The cost is $3,795 in double occupancy, and for single occupancy is $4,192. Any of this includes the air ticket, hotel, breakfast, dinner, entrance fee to site, plus your visa. Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity once again, and I hope to see all of you soon in this wonderful trip. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kufuor. So please, the forms are available. We have forms here at Frimpong-Manso Institute office here at Jowulu. You can also pick a form online. You can also call our office lines and we'll be willing to assist you. We want to say thank you to everyone who joined the webinar this evening. And to end the session this evening, I would like to invite Reverend Dr. Kwame Bansa to give us the closing prayer. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for this meeting, the education we've had, and more importantly, our responsibility to put this into practice. Dear Lord, it is clear in your word that you want us to take good care of the earth that you have given to us as an inheritance. You expect us to teach it in our pulpits, live it in our lives, pass it on to the next generation, and be very responsible people so that that which you have given to us will be well taken care of. Thank you for the presenter. Thank you for all of us who came to listen. We pray that may we not only put the knowledge into practice, but help us to share it with other people so that together we have a shared responsibility to treasure our health and keep our environment safe and sound. Bless us tonight till we have the next meeting. Be with us and keep us all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. We are grateful to everyone who joined. We've shared our contacts in the chat. You can visit our website. You can follow us on our social media handles. Thank you very much. Reverend Professor Frimpong-Manso, please, if you have any last comments before.
I want to thank
you, Daddy.
Dr. Ken and Dr. Sami, except that, Dr. Sami, let us see your face a little. We are very, very grateful for all this. And for the trip to Israel, I conceived the idea, feeling that all work and no play make a double. So we should start some of these journeys, and I will be around to add theological discussions as we go to the places. Dr. Bansa will be with me, possibly Professor Samuel. So it won't be like any other tour. Dr. Sando is here. All of us will add to make it wonderful. Tell your friends, bring your church members. You can bring your church members, your friends, your colleagues, and it's going to be great. Once again, this is the face of Dr. Nkansa Dakun. I wanted you to see you. My in-law, actually. So Dr. Ken, Dr. Sami, Dr. Bat, all of you, Dr. Sando, all of you, Mercy and team, you've done wonderful. And we celebrate all of you. God bless you. Until, I think I will request that we do this session again. I'm actually going to see Dr. Ken and Dr. Sami if there can be a repeated version, because we need more people to hear this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof.
I'm done.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ansah. Thank you, Dr. Frimpong, and everyone. We are grateful. Have a good night. Thank you.
Good night.
No.